call to order. This is the May 14th, 2018 pre-council meeting.
We'll begin with roll call. Mayor Odeker.
Here.
Councilman Dickinson.
Here.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Here.
Councilman Girl.
Here.
Councilman Hug. Absent. Councilman Morris.
Here.
Councilman Mudrin.
Here.
Councilwoman Coleman.
Here.
Councilman Turk.
Here.
First on the agenda is a presentation, Bicentennial Park Concert Series, Summer 2018, Short-Term Loan Funding, presented by Lori Carmine.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. As she said, my name is Lori Carmine. I am the manager at Bicentennial Park, and I am just about to hit my second year there. This was something that I've been thinking about for a long time, a concert series on a larger scale. So we're looking for our national acts. We're looking at tickets between 5,000 and 10,000, and we're looking at different styles, different genres, R&B, indie alternative dance, something that gives us a more diverse entertainment. Where we're looking at the south of Jefferson Street parking lot, south side. We did cursory measurements and based it on one person per 2 square feet. And we should fit 10,000 people there. That would also involve some video screens, large video screens. And we're looking at next summer. It could be a one-day event. It could be once a month, or it could be all smushed into a weekend. Why are we doing it? This is probably the biggest question. Really wanting to look at a larger audience, more diverse audience. We are also hoping to appeal and attract a younger demographic in the 20s and 30s to our park. And we are hoping that with potential revenue brought in, we would be able to fund additional programming, free programming throughout the year. This is a model I have kind of based off of New Lenox. I had some conversations with their finance officer, and she was giving me how they do their concert series, their triple play. So I have created 3 options based off of that conversation. One is the 3-for-1, 3 concerts for 1 ticket price. There's also the option of just doing a single concert or 3 single concerts. I've included some budgets for you to look at. These are really general budgets. They are in depth, but until you have an artist, it's hard to really say exactly what the costs are going to be. And here's the big question is how much? The budget itself should be self-sustaining. The artist fees are covered through the cost of ticket sales. Sponsorships would be factored in, as well as beer and concession sales. There is also the option for insurance, for weather insurance, which I would recommend, and the potential to fund a whole year's worth of programming at the park. So the number we're looking at wouldn't be more than 80,000. I think that's our top high end. I like to overestimate things. I like to go guesstimate high so that I can come under budget, because I always like to come under budget. And I promised it would be short and sweet, and that is my presentation. Does anyone have any questions? I'm sure you have a lot of questions once you look at it, but.
Questions? Yeah.
Well, you had mentioned that this would be done in the parking lot.
Yes.
So what would that take up some of the parking?
Oh, we wouldn't be using that for parking on that. Okay. We would be using the north side of the parking lot we can use, and the parking decks and street parking.
That would be the alternative parking.
Right.
Question.
Yeah.
Okay, with that being said, Lori, I know there've been a lot of conflicts with a lot of events going on at the same time. So parking at the Rialto would be in the decks, as would the Forge and other restaurants. So, where are you gonna put, say, 5,000 cars if there's two to a car?
Well, we have all the parking along the river as well, and probably shuttling people. That was one of the options we were discussing. We've done that for other events at the park. So, also going up Jefferson Street, there should be some.
Well, I know Debbie Green from the development director, she gave me a note one night at one of the meetings, and she wants, this is her quote here, "Let's see if we can all work together using the chamber calendar to pick dates so there are not 3 to 5 things going on at the same time."
Which would be ideal, yeah.
Right, and I know that's out there, but it's not happening. So maybe the chamber could reach out to those venues and just so we can all work together, because sometimes you want to go to this and you can't because something else is going on that you want to go equally.
Right, and I would definitely have to.
That would help with the parking.
It would definitely, and even just reaching out to the other venues to ask what they have. And I know sometimes, like the Rialto, they just come up and they aren't allowed to share.
Correct.
But at least I can give them a
Or
call.
they can say they got something going on. They don't have to
Right.
necessarily say what it is,
Right.
but they've got something that evening. That'd be my only suggestion. And would the foundation be giving any money towards this?
Yeah, well, they hold the liquor license, so they would be having to do I assume the liquor. And I know we'd have to really discuss that with them, but that would be the $25,000 worth to supply the beer and wine and concessions.
And they're open to that?
Yes.
Good. That's all I have. Thank you.
Lori, one question. Hey, I want to commend you for thinking out of the box. I think it's great, the progress and forward thinking. Was there any thought in year one, maybe starting smaller? 10,000 is a big event. You're going to get a big time act coming to Joliet, which is great. But because of the logistics and a lot of the questions and the fact that the park has never handled something like this, would that be a thought, maybe work your way up, start with a smaller artist?
Starting with about a 5,000, yes. I would think, that's kind of my thought process, is let's start with something and see how everything works out. Although I wouldn't like to limit it either. If you have a 5,000 artist, where they're generally playing to 5,000 people, but you can sell 7,000 tickets, we have the space to do that, but we could possibly cap it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is this, David, has this been a formal proposal sent to the city?
We wanted to kind of start with kind of this sharing the conceptual plan, see if there was support, knowing it's first year. But like you say, I think it's great that they're looking for a way to hopefully generate a little bit more money to cover some of the costs. But we just wanted any feedback from the council. If you're supportive, maybe as is, reduce it a little bit, or you might support a temporary loan as up to the amount listed, up to 80,000. So any feedback you would have would be greatly appreciated.
I think the parking would be the biggest problem. Even if we had just 5,000 people, I think parking would still be a major problem, because you're not going to fit 1,500 cars over in the north side of Bicentennial Park.
No.
So I see that as a major stumbling block.
Okay.
Your Honor, for me.
Yes.
Lori, I have the same concerns. I love the idea of having something in that park. This is great. And then to target certain demographics in there and as the age group. I fit into that 20, 30 age group, so I'm excited.
I'm right there with you.
And so, but my concerns too will be, how do we do this parking piece? And maybe we got enough time now to start looking at other alternatives. The busing, I can see shuttling people back and forth, but where do we stack them to get them? But this is awesome. I'm liking the idea, and So, yeah, let's put our thinking caps on and figure out how we can work that out.
So would you like a more formal proposal or something to start considering other options, considering parking and funding and?
Well, do we have a committee that could take a look at a formal proposal and work through some of these details? I'm not sure we do.
I don't think we do, but, you know, I think, you know, the parking is probably challenging, but if you get a well-known act, people will find parking. They'll get up somewhere and get there, you know. But, yeah, I don't know if we have a council committee.
Wouldn't the stadium committee kind of?
Or the
Yeah, we could, stadium committee could look at it.
Or as the bike park liaison, maybe work with their.
Either way.
So if it goes wrong, we can blame Mike.
There you go. It won't go wrong.
Yeah, I think something more formal, I think, would be appropriate, so we can look at it.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
Nice job, Lori.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lori.
I apologize, I have to leave right away for a banquet for my kids, but I didn't want you to think I was just ducking out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have a presentation, the 2018 IDOT Statewide Planning and Research Grant Program Proposed Application for Funding, the Joliet Intermodal Transportation Master Plan, presented by David Hales and Jim Trisna.
Mayor and Council, before jumping into this particular topic for a few minutes of just overview, do want to recognize that we have a couple of Will County economic development officials in the audience tonight. We have John Grueling, Executive Director, President, CEO, and Doug Pryor, his assistant. We appreciate them coming tonight. Recently, it was actually brought to our attention by John that the IDOT had a program where they were soliciting applications for planning grants. And as indicated in the agenda for tonight, this particular grant that we're looking at is one that pertains to not construction or anything of that nature, but strictly planning grant, planning and research. We believe that it would be in our interest in partner with Will County to submit an application for funding for a very specific planning grant that deals with some of the great challenges we're facing in Will County and other environments, and that has to do with transportation for industrial traffic. In fact, what is being proposed is that we solicit a grant up to as much as $250,000. The purpose of the grant would be to take and to look at what plans are needed to address all the impacts, both safety and transportation issues that are currently being presented or based on existing development, but also have this particular planning look to ultimate build out. So as an example, even right now we have a lot of industrial zone property that is undeveloped. As that property continues to look at future development, we're not sure that any of the current documents we have on record, or even some of the projects, are looking at full build out of even currently projected or even future development. As indicated by the DCEO, we have upwards of 40 million square feet that could be added. Now, not all of that is in the Joliet, Will County area, but we do think upwards of, I think about 60% could take place in the Joliet Elwood area. Everything south of I-80, east of I-55, over to Highway or Illinois Route 93. So unfortunately, there's what we don't have a good handle on. What is that future build out? And how do we ensure that we have plans to accommodate all that industrial development if that was going to continue? That's the purpose of this grant, and it's a planning grant. It will build on the previously approved Will County Freight Mobility Plan that exists. It'll build on what IDOT has been looking at in the way of I-80 upgrades, but more so, it'll help us better understand what do we need as far as the future, rather than having something built and then dealing with the full impact in the way of transportation improvements for years, on into the future. This particular grant would be provided through federal funds that come down through IDOT. It does require a match of money, and what we're looking at is the city of Joliet and Will County would each contribute $25,000. That would be our local match for a potential project cost planning of upwards of $250,000. We're also hoping that maybe we can come up with some additional private sector funding. Unfortunately, the timing of this particular grant is coming up on us very rapidly. In fact, the deadline for online submission is this Wednesday. About a little over a week ago, we did have a meeting in the CED offices. We had not only John chairing that meeting, but representatives of the Will County staff, City of Joliet staff, and we talked about this particular project, the need for such a planning undertaking. And I've been in talk with Nick Palmer, the Chief of Staff for the County Executive, about participation by those two entities. So once again, I do want to stress one point. What we're really lacking again is that plan for ultimate build out and something that would be needed to help guide future discussions, not only with IDOT, Will County, CED, and even our city and surrounding villages and communities to better understand of what the future transportation system may need to look at if we were to achieve build-out status sometime in the future. If I could, since John is here, I'm just going to ask John if you could come forward and just add anything else you might address, including, well, don't we have plans that already address something like this? So if you could just talk about what we see in our discussions as some of the justification for such a future-based planning study.
Thank you, David. As, excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, appreciate the opportunity to speak about this. What we see as a very important step in maximizing both the utilization of our existing infrastructure, which is really challenged, as you all know, by the additional freight movement, and as well as workers and just regular people driving their car south of 80 throughout the Elwood Joliet area. But more importantly, what does the future look like? And I often get asked, okay, Grueling, if another warehouse gets built, how many more hundred trucks? How many more hundred trucks can that road take? What is it going to do to the capacity of 80? And so there's literally a domino effect as these projects come online. The problem is, and we learned this in the study we did, the Will County Community Friendly Freight Mobility Plan, that a lot of decisions about land use are being made by individual communities, not necessarily looking at the larger impacts on the transportation infrastructure. This gives us an opportunity in a particular part of Will County to do that. As you consider future land uses up and down 53, up and down Laraway, as we go east on Laraway into unincorporated areas that look like will be developed for industrial development, the question has to be on every city council's member's mind is, can our local roads handle that? Some would say, yeah, it can for a while, but we're not really sure for the long term. I'm about to leave for Washington. It's Infrastructure Week in Washington, D.C., and I'll be meeting with not only congressional leadership, but members of the Federal Highway Administration, the Federal Railroad Administration. And the message, I already know the message they're going to give us. They're going to say, the local communities that are better prepared through planning and data collection, that understand their freight and passenger movement, are going to be in a better position to secure funding help from the federal government. The real challenge, though, is if you know about the funding formulas that are changing moving forward. It used to be 20% of the match would have to come from the local sources, and 80% on federal projects would come from the federal government. Moving forward, that ratio is going to reverse. So we're going to need more and more local funding, not just city and county, but looking at private investment. And again, preparing a plan that can demonstrate why this investment is necessary and why it will address some of these challenges. The basic study area is, if you look at Laraway Road and Route 53 as the nexus. As we all know, that's a major pinch point for freight movement in this county. And I think that if we can project in the future in terms of what is already entitled by Elwood, by Joliet, by the county for industrial development, and then look at the undeveloped or unentitled land and project what potentially could be developed on that based on current land use plans and comprehensive plans, we're going to have a much better understanding of whether or not this local road system is going to be able to take care of that. And if it can't, then certain investments are going to have to be made before certain developments are approved. It only makes sense. Some of that, and I would argue that a fair amount of it, could be put on the backs of some of the developers. The State Secretary of Transportation is very fond of saying now, when we're building roads, we need to look at who's benefiting from that and how do we get them to pay, whether it be a toll road or a user fee. More and more, I think that's where we're going to be leaning for this heavy-duty road utilization. So I think it's a great way to take a look at this, both from the top down, but also understand what the ground impacts are going to be going up. You've had recent annexations along 53, approving what eventually will be some very large industrial buildings. I think this plan can help guide projects like that and whether or not the road network is going to be able to take care of that traffic. I'm glad to answer any questions.
Let me just ask Jim Trisna, our Director of Public Works, any last comments on this particular planning study proposal?
Yes, obviously you guys define what this planning grant is pretty well. And generally, just so everybody understands the area, I was reading through this information on the grant already, and a consultant who's on retainer, I believe, by the county right now, Ann Schneider, who used to be the former Secretary of Transportation, I believe it was. Her firm has done a little bit of look at this area, and it talked about, the freight mobility study had 3 major clusters they were very concerned about, and the one involving what we're looking at trying to maybe get a grant on is the area pretty much from I-80 on the north, I-55 on the west, only 53 on the east, which could be expanded a little farther east. And then basically it said the south end of the intermodal. I'm looking down, almost down towards Clough Road, south of Walter Strawn. You know, you've got 2 intermodals. You've got Joliet Center Point with the Union Pacific Railroad, and you've got Elwood's being a South Railroad facility. Now the Elwood area is, talking with Center Point, they had both facilities, they developed both intermodal facilities and the adjacent properties. They're probably 85–90% kind of built out down there. Joliet's is at maybe 50% at most. So we've got quite a bit of land still developed. I think it'd be a very good idea, like John and David said, that if you have a planning study, you have a better chance of getting money for actual engineering, future engineering. And I think the study may also kind of incorporate maybe a little bit more land use out here. When the city did the comprehensive plan, Public Works, Kendall next to me in planning, the Center Point, the intermodal wasn't on the docket. We didn't even know about that at the time. So our comprehensive plan for that south area did not include that, and that roadway network didn't include that. So this, I think, is a nice chance to kind of update a little bit what we currently have also. And as I talked to David a little bit today, we emailed that before. At this point, it's got to get turned around very quickly. I think it'd be appropriate if David was going to continue working with Nick Palmer at the county. They have this Ann Schneider, who would be the person I would suggest letting her finish off, her firm finish off the application. Doesn't mean they're going to do the work to get the grant, just finishing the application process. And again, the county has them on retainer, so they're going to be an appropriate place to start. But it sounds like a very good grant, looking at what we might need. I mean, obviously, we're all aware of the big project we're looking at, working out of the public-private partnership. to do the whole road extension project. We're all very familiar with that. So this would add more roadway network to the program. And again, like John and David well said, I think the state is looking heavily now to see more money come out of the developers, which it used to always be that way in our town. We kind of got a little bit away from that, but you know, we need to put, you know, more of the onus on the infrastructure on the developers. They're the ones, you know, sure they're going to benefit, they got business here, they're going to benefit with some from revenue, but these folks are the ones putting a lot of the pressure on the roadway network. And like I said, this whole road's a pretty good example of that. You know, that's a pretty substantial, it's a major investment by CenterPoint. They're putting in probably about 7 or 8 times what the city and the state are putting in for the private section of that whole road extension.
In summary, we would recommend that the council give support to submitting this application by the deadline on Wednesday. The Will County Board is in a similar situation. They did not have time to have this particular issue formally put on one of their agendas. So what we've been doing is both parties were seeking at least conceptual support. Keep in mind, you're not approving a contract. We don't even know if the application would be approved, but we think given the needs in this area, there would be strong support, and this kind of substantial funding at the federal level doesn't come along that often. But again, we would at least request some sort of verbal support to us submitting an application, and then we can take any other questions you might have on this application or the grant program.
Yes.
Wow, this is a long time coming, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing. And for us to be proactive in terms of finding this information out and making a strategic plan around it, I think this is good. So, thumbs up. Great job. Thank you.
I know Jim Trisna had mentioned, I think it's a great plan as well. It's a good idea, and I'm glad that we're partnering with the county as well. But are we, you mentioned, Jim, the Southside Comprehensive Plan, which is probably 10, 11 years old. A lot of things have happened right in the last 10, 11 years. Are we updating that plan, or are we in the process of, maybe doing a citywide plan, or maybe just updating that Southside plan?
Yes, Councilman, I can address that. Yes, we are in the process of developing requests for qualifications for a citywide comprehensive plan. Once that's out on the street, there'll be vetting of qualified firms, and then we'll move to a full request for proposals. It's going to be probably an 18-month to a 2-year process because of the scope of the city of Joliet in terms of land use and transportation and other things that we want to update.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, John, if I heard correctly, the city is giving 25 grand towards this and the CED.
We're contemplating that.
Right. Are there other communities that are going to defray the cost? Because this is kind of a regional thing, right?
Well, it is, except that we thought we'd start with a county and a city partnership here because, you know, part of the success is going to be based on consensus among the big governmental players. And again, given the time frame, my suggestion was to reach out to some of the private developers, maybe even the railroads, as we find out whether or not we're going to succeed with this. But there's been no formal ask made, and the local match will be required. So if there's an interest in pursuing this, the request at this point would be to do some cost sharing between the city and the county, yes.
But it is our intent to look to the private sector to see if we can raise additional funding, which would decrease, you know, the city and county match.
Plus, we can manage the size and scope of the study too, depending on, you know, what we end up with in terms of costs.
I just have one comment. Since we do have such a time constraint to get this done, this is Monday evening and it's got to be in by Wednesday. Is there a time on Wednesday? Is it like a 48 hours or is it 40 hours it has to be in? My concern is, I think it's a fabulous idea, don't get me wrong. I just want to make sure the application is, the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted.
Since we had our initial meeting almost a week and a half ago, I guess, Ann Schneider, who is on retainer to help with freight and transportation issues for the county, has been hunched over a computer pretty much, and the draft she submitted for to circulate is very
It's pretty much ready to go.
It's very strong.
Okay.
I appreciate that comment, though. In the short time frame, I got to tell you, this is happening more and more, especially with transportation planning and funding. We're not getting 6-8 months to do applications anymore. We got the money, we want to spend it, and the ones that are better prepared are going to get it. And that's kind of how we see it.
That's why you're proactive. Very good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
John, one thing I've heard over and over again, because there's a looming idea that there's going to be big infrastructure money coming either from the state or from the federal government.
Right.
And we've been told repeatedly that the communities that are ready to go have the best chance of getting the money. This would help put us in that position.
Absolutely. And that, Bob, as you know, that was the reason we did the freight mobility plan. Right. We had to get our data. Information is very expensive. You have to do these plans before they're going to let you do any engineering. And it improves our odds, no question about it. And let's face it, we've got a lot. We don't have to prove a lot to too many people, but we definitely have to have, as Jan said, our ducks in a row, and we go after specific dollars. So I appreciate your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and proceed then with that application unless there's anything else from the council tonight. But I think it is the right thing to do, and it's a great opportunity to leverage that federal money on some critical planning that's needed for our local and regional transportation system. Turn it back to City Clerk.
Next is citizens to be heard on agenda items. We have John Sheridan here for Council Memo 263-18.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. I'm here tonight as president of the Cunningham Neighborhood Council, speaking on the liquor license. As you're aware, liquor licenses in our area is a very sensitive issue, and we try to work with the businesses. We welcome new businesses coming into the area. Somebody left their pen up here if they need it. But we try to work with the businesses coming into the area. And we sat down with the applicant on this business here, the El Primo restaurant, and we expressed our concerns, and we believe we haven't worked out because, as you're aware, no matter where, somewhere where you put the pin on the map, we have as much as 20% of liquor licenses in Cunningham area alone, out of a 64 square miles, city. So that's why we're concerned about what comes in our area and how it gets presented. But we come to an understanding, and with the hours of operation, and they're going to just be serving the beer and wine with the meals. It's not going to be set up as a bar, even though they have a rather large serving counter in there. You're not going to come in there at 8 o'clock at night and see people lined up drinking shots and beer. So we have that reassurance. In addition, they talked about an entertainment license, and we had some neighbors who had expressed some concerns about that license and the entertainment, that we really didn't want that in a restaurant. It's more for eating and not for entertainment. So we come to agreement upon that. I myself have been in that restaurant a couple different times, and it's a great restaurant. The food's great, the staff is great, and invite you all to stop by and enjoy some food there. But we do endorse the liquor license, and with those understandings for our area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have the Deputy Liquor Commissioner here to discuss the licenses and permit applications on the agenda.
Mayor, City Council. First is Council Member 262-18. A public hearing was held on March 18th, 2018 at 10 a.m. for a request of a new Class CD license. The applicant is Best Western Plus Motel. Last name is Mukushmar Patel. The location is 3231 Norman Avenue. No persons appeared in opposition. There are no outstanding monies owed to the city. Building and police, fire have no issues. Based on the facts of the hearing, the Liquor Commission is recommending approval. Next is Council Memo 263-18. Public hearing was held on March 18th, 2018 at 9 a.m. for a request of a new Class E license for El Primo Mexican Restaurant Number 2, 700 Ruby Street. Applicant is Calissa Ramirez. William Morris, a neighbor, is not against a liquor license, but at the current conditions such as traffic. The previous owner left garbage around, and there's a veteran's home next door where there are people with drug problems is a concern. Mr. Sheridan, who you just heard from, was at the meeting as well and gave his endorsement. There are no outstanding monies owed to the city. The building department will approve after completion of reservations. The police and fire have no issues. Based on the facts of the hearing, the Liquor Commissioner is recommending approval. A public hearing was held on March 18, 2018, 9:30 a.m. for request of a Class A license. The applicant is Sandra Valero, DBA Molnar's Tap. Location is 1123 Clement Street. The previous holder of the license was her husband, who is now deceased. No persons appeared in oppositions. There are no outstanding monies owed to the city. Building department is fine. And based on the facts of this hearing, Liquor Commissioner is recommending approval. Any questions?
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have the city manager review the agenda items for tomorrow night's meeting.
Mayor and council, just backing up very briefly. Tomorrow night, the Finance Committee will be reviewing the invoices paid report, which is on the agenda, together with the position vacancies. And there will be 2 regular payroll reports that, once again, the Finance Committee will review and make recommendation tomorrow night. So other than that and the proclamations, I'll jump down to ordinances and resolutions unless there's any questions on any of those items towards the front of the council agenda. On ordinances and resolutions, we, at the applicant's request, we delayed the ordinances relating to the 701 Plainfield Road, a request for variation of use. But it's my understanding that the applicant has once again asked to have this matter delayed. Krista, is our understanding just until the next meeting in June?
Correct.
Okay, so that would be 1A, 1B. Just might want to remind the council on this one, the ZBA, in a motion to approve the variation of use failed. There was 2 ayes, 5 nays. So this comes with, I guess you could say, a negative recommendation in the affirmative, and staff also recommends denial. But to accommodate the applicant's request, we'll delay this once again at their request. Moving on to at 3021 Plainfield Road, the Planning Commission gave a solid, there was 7 votes in favor of the vacation of a 0.439 acre portion of Division Street, right away near, once again, 3021 Plainfield Road. I believe we also have this particular, maybe it's the, well, anyway, this will be on there. This is a site of an existing service station, and they're looking to expanding it, so it'll be a similar use. I just might mention too, you'll notice in the packet that there was an appraisal done, the portion of property to be vacated, which came in at $95,500 with a recommendation to sell that portion to be vacated at the appraised fair market value. They're also tied into this is the following, is the next ordinance for special use permit to allow the construction of a new car wash also at this location. And the ZBA also supported this with 7 aye votes and no dissension. Is there any questions on this particular matter at 3021 Plainfield Road? If not, moving on, Council Memo 2268-18. The Finance Committee tomorrow night will consider and submit a report on an ordinance to increase the service fee on return checks to impose a service charge equal to that charged by the bank. And that's all. It's a very brief memo, but the Finance Committee will review that in their meeting tomorrow night. You'll have their report. Moving on, Council Memo 269-18. We have a series of 3 very substantial ordinances regarding administrative adjudication. This matter was discussed in the Land Use and Legislative Committee, but I'd like to turn to Marty Shanahan, who took some time off from paternity leave, helping his wife and family with a new addition to their family, but he's here tonight and tomorrow night to...
Not tomorrow.
Not tomorrow, okay.
Unless there's issues.
Just wanted to, I'll turn it to Marty so that we could see if there's any questions council might have on this very extensive administrative adjudication and all the ordinances that tie into this new program. So, Marty.
So the first thing is you have on the dais is a change to 4C. You know, when we went and reasons for tow of the vehicle, we actually left one out of the updated ordinance, and that's towing a vehicle for registration suspended for non-insurance. So that was an oversight, so we want to put that back in. So, but otherwise, they were extensively reviewed at Land Use and Legislative Committee.
Yes, it was.
So essentially, it's, you know, in a nutshell, it's combining, and the ordinances were kind of disjointed, and this puts them all into one kind of easy to read section, puts the administrative hearings into one section. So.
Any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the section on resolution. Council Memo 27118, we have a resolution accepting a grant from the Illinois Housing Development Authority Abandoned Residential Property Municipal Relief Program. I'd like to turn to Kendall Jackson just to briefly mention how much this grant might be and how we will use that, and approximately how many abandoned residential properties it could be, as I understand it, demolished with this particular grant. Mr. Jackson.
Mayors and members of the City Council, this grant would be in the order of $250,000. In the past, we have been successful in getting grant funding through this program. The first two rounds, the first round was $75,000. The second round, which we're still working through the funding, was $250,000, and of course the third round coming up will be an additional $250,000. In terms of the number of structures that we have been able to use, the plan for round 3 would be 14 blighted structures in the city. I believe there was a similar amount that we had forecasted for round 2. So it's an impactful grant. We've had success with it, and we'd like to continue to utilize this program to assist with getting rid of blighted structures in the city.
Is there any questions on that particular grant? And it's it looks pretty certain we will be getting the grant. Well, the document that's been submitted to the city would, if approved, would go back, and ultimately they will approve it, and
yes, correct.
Hopefully the funding will be secured. Yeah, very positive development from IDA, and more money to address this need.
Just a quick question, Mayor. Kendall, how do you determine which properties to use it towards?
Yeah, so it's our typical process where we bring those properties to the City Council, and we have them declared as public nuisances. And once they're declared public nuisances, we then can go to court and get a demolition decree. So it's a tried and true process that we've had in the past, and that's how we would continue to target those structures that need to be taken down.
Thank you.
Moving on, unless there's any other questions. Finance Committee tomorrow night will discuss Council Bill 27218, resolution declaring certain City of Joliet property, and I should say personal property, as surplus. This basically involves a number of IT-related equipment that would be declared surplus and allow e-scrap technology out of Bolingbrook to recycle some of these electronic and obsolete equipment. Moving on to Council Amendment 27318, resolution appropriating motor fuel tax funds in the amount of $3.8 million for an MFT roadways resurfacing contract. This item will also be on the Public Service Committee tomorrow night for consideration. Next major section is bids and contracts. Let me start with the first one. Council Memo 27518. The Finance Committee tomorrow night will consider request for authorization to award a 3-year contract for the Unified Electronic Payment System to Paymentus for approximately $100,000 per year. I will see if there's any questions, but once again, the Finance Committee will consider this and bring back their recommendation tomorrow night. If not, what I'd like to do is take the next two items are contract related. The Public Service Committee will consider these. First, it's a payment to the Joliet Mosquito Abatement Program to Clark Environmental for the 2018 mosquito abatement service. And secondly, the 2018 roadways resurfacing contract in the amount of $3.8 million. Once again, both of these will be on public service tomorrow, but is there any questions you might have tonight? Amendments, change orders, and payments. Items 1 through 6 will be on the public service agenda for tomorrow night. As you notice, we have a variety of different change orders, payments, and amendments. And rather than go through each and every one, once again, Public Service Committee will review these individually and bring back their recommendation. Just want to see, after reviewing, is there any questions you might have or ask the Public Service Committee tomorrow night to consider in their deliberation? If not, that concludes the review of the items on tomorrow night's City Council agenda. Turn it back to the City Clerk.
Next is public comments. Is there anyone present that would like to speak under public comments?
Good evening, everyone. Candace from St. John's neighborhood. I'm here today, technically not tomorrow because tomorrow is super busy. We have a neighborhood cleanup coming up Saturday, May 19th from 10 a.m. until 12 p.m. It's actually going to be a combination of St. John's, Big Brothers Big Sisters, and the Cathedral Area Preservation Association. There are going to be 2 meeting spots in the morning. One will be at Big Brothers Big Sisters, and then we'll be kind of fanning out. And then afterwards at 12 p.m., we're going to be having a cookout with different foods and then treats. And then we actually have a raffle for White Sox tickets. So we would like to invite you guys to come out to the neighborhood cleanup Saturday, May 19th.
You're meeting in the parking lot, Big Brothers Big Sisters?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak this evening? Seeing none, there is a request to go into closed session this evening. Is there a motion to go into closed session to discuss personnel, collective bargaining, land acquisition, or conveyance pending or threatened litigation, after which the meeting will be adjourned?
So moved.
Second.
Been motion seconded to approve. Councilman Dickinson.
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Aye.
Councilman Girl.
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Pullman.
Aye.
Councilman Turk.
Aye.
Motion carried.